I held her intestines to save her, and then they started to scream. I haven't slept in 3 days, and it's not because of the caffeine, it's the smell. I can still smell it on my hands, no matter how many times I scrub them raw with surgical disinfectant. It's a phantom, a memory that has soaked into my skin, a sweet, earthy rot like a crypt full of wet leaves. It started at the end of a 24-hour shift. My body was a husk, my brain a thrumming, exhausted wire. All I could think about was my bed. Just had to sign off on one more chart. I tapped out the last of the vitals, the fluorescent lights of the ward humming a hateful little tune, and started the long walk toward the exit. The hospital is a different animal after 3 a.m. It's a hollowed-out skeleton. Every squeak of your shoes, every distant, hacking cough, it all echoes down the sterile corridors like a warning. I was halfway through the main lobby, a vast empty space of polished floors and uncomfortable chairs, when I saw her. She was folded into a wheelchair near the darkened information desk, a wax figure. Her skin had a pale, greasy sheen, and her dark hair was plastered to her scalp. Behind her, a man rocked on his heels, his face a mess of panic and exhaustion. He kept glancing from the woman to the ER admissions window, where a lone clerk was staring blankly at a computer screen. I should have kept walking. Every screaming cell in my body told me to. My shift was over. I was no one's doctor right now. But something held me there. It was the way she was sitting, not slumped, not unconscious. She was arranged. Her head was tilted at an angle that looked deeply uncomfortable, her hands limp in her lap, palms up, like an offering. I drifted closer, my tired feet moving against my will. The man saw me. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, latched onto my scrubs. "Doctor? Please, you have to help. My wife, Amara. Her doctor sent us here. She was sick all morning, but while we were waiting, he trailed off, gesturing helplessly at her. She just got quiet." His words were just noise. My focus was on Amara. Her lips were parted, a dry, cracked line, and a low, rhythmic sound was coming from her chest. Not a death rattle. It was smoother than that. A soft, constant hum, almost like a chant. I reached out and laid 2 fingers on the clammy skin of her wrist, searching for a pulse. I found one, but it was all wrong. It was thready and slow, a hesitant little tap, 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 maybe 30 beats a minute, irregular, like a watch slowly dying. Her skin was cold, damp, her eyes were half open, the pupils fixed, reflecting the overhead lights as 2 dead, milky points. Shock, septic probably, in the middle of the fucking lobby. In the middle of the fucking lobby, no one had even noticed. A hot, unfamiliar anger coiled in my gut. I looked over at the admissions clerk who was now scrolling through her phone. Without a word, I grabbed the handles of the wheelchair. "Follow me," I snapped at the husband. "We're not waiting. We didn't run." Running would have invited panic, questions. We moved with a grim, processional slowness down the long hallway to the emergency department. I tried to get a history out of the husband, but his answers were a panic jumble. Sickness, vomiting, something about blood. My own thoughts were a frantic loop. I'm just a resident. If she codes here, in this hallway, I have to start compressions. I shoved the thought away. We burst through the ER doors. "I need a crash cart in trauma. 1, now," I yelled. The on-call attending, a guy named Pat, was jolted from a doze in his chair. In seconds, the bay was a swarm of nurses and techs. We heaved Amara onto the gurney. The monitors flickered to life, painting a grim picture in blinking numbers. Heart rate 28, blood pressure 60 over nothing. Respirations, a shallow puff every 10 seconds. Her husband was babbling about her vomiting that morning. I pried her mouth open to check her airway and was hit by a wave of that smell, the one that's still clinging to me now. It wasn't just the metallic tang of digested blood, it was older. It smelled of deep earth, of things sealed away in the dark, of decay that had been allowed to fester for centuries. Her abdomen was the worst part. It was swollen, tight as a drum. I pressed my stethoscope to her skin. I expected silence, the absence of bowel sounds. But I heard something else. It wasn't a gurgle or a rumble. It was a faint, dry, whispering sound, a sibilant shushing, like sand scouring the inside of a glass jar. A sound that had no business coming from a human body. The monitor let out a sharp beep. 27 BPM. Push one of atropine, Pat barked. A nurse slammed the drug into her IV. The numbers on the screen crept up. 29, 32, 38. Amara let out a low moan, a long, drawn-out note that seemed to hang in the air, perfectly in tune with the hum of the machines. She did it again, and again. A horrible melodic rhythm. I looked at Pat. Could be a perfed ulcer. Abdomen's rigid. He ordered a portable ultrasound. The grainy black and white image confirmed it. Her belly was full of free fluid. She was bleeding out internally. We had to get in there and stop it. Get Avedisian, he told me, naming the chief of surgery. Tell him we're coming up. 30 agonizing minutes later, we had her just stable enough to move. Wheeling her to the OR, I felt like the walls were leaning in, the lights flickering in time with her strange, rhythmic moans. In the operating room, the air was cold and clean. Dr. Avedisian was a rock, his movements calm and economical. He introduced me to the second assist, Dr. Thorne. You're on retractors, Kaz, Avedisian said. Keep the field clear. We scrubbed, gowned, and gloved. The ritual was comforting, the familiar steps a shield against the wrongness seeping from the woman on the table. Then Avedisian made the first incision. The smell hit us like a physical blow. That ancient grave dirt stench poured out of her, thick and suffocating. It made my eyes water behind my surgical glasses. Thorne actually gagged. We opened her abdomen, and the pool of blood inside wasn't red. It was black. A thick, syrupy black that didn't reflect the lights, but seemed to swallow them. We suctioned frantically, but it was like trying to empty an ocean. We worked deeper. Avedisian and Thorne located the intestines, lifting the heavy, distended coils out to find the source of the bleed. They placed the mass into my waiting, gloved hands. I was supposed to hold them steady. That was my only job. But I couldn't. They were moving, not with the slow, gentle pulse of peristalsis. They were writhing, coiling and uncoiling with a cold, muscular strength, like a nest of snakes. I felt it through the latex, a powerful, alien life squirming in my grasp. Sweat poured down my face, fogging my glasses. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. Then, with a wet, tearing sound, they ruptured. It wasn't an explosion. It was an unfurling. A torrent of blood and black, foul-smelling fluid burst out, drenching the sterile field, splashing across the floor. It hit my chest and face. My glasses saved my eyes, but Thorne and Avedisian weren't so lucky. They stood frozen for a second, their faces spattered. They stared, wide-eyed, into the gaping cavity. Amara's abdomen had become a chasm. The intestines I'd been holding were gone, peeled back like a gruesome husk. And from the darkness within, something was pouring out. It wasn't an organ. It wasn't a tumor. It was a churning, self-weaving lattice of black, chitinous limbs and things that looked like faces, all melting into one another. Mouths opened and closed without sound. Countless wet black eyes blinked out of sync. It was a knot of impossible anatomy, twisting and growing, filling the space above her body. The lights of the OR seemed to bend toward it, the very air rippling around its form. It was the source of the sound, the dry, sandy whispering now amplified into a chorus. The thing reached out. A glistening, black tendril touched Thorne's mask. Another brushed Avedisian's arm. They didn't scream. They didn't even flinch. Their bodies went slack. Their heads tilted, first Thorne, then Avedisian, in perfect, horrifying unison. Their breathing, visible as fog on their plastic face shields, synchronized into the same slow, ritualistic rhythm as Amara's moans. They were puppets, empty. The OR door swung open. A scrub nurse, drawn by the sound of the rupture, poked her head in. Her gasp, a sharp intake of air, broke the spell that held me. I didn't think. I just ran. I dropped the retractors, stumbled back, and bolted. I slammed through the doors and ran down the sterile corridor until my lungs were on fire and the taste of bile was in my throat. I didn't stop until I collapsed in a heap by a bank of elevators, choking and sobbing. Avidesian and Thorne are in the ICU now. They're listed as comatose, unresponsive, but I've seen them. Their faces are slack, their eyes open and unfocused. Their bellies have started to swell. And sometimes, when no one else is in the room, they twitch. Not randomly, but together. A subtle, coordinated shudder that runs through both their bodies at the exact same time. Everyone is asking me what happened. The hospital administrators, the other doctors, they think there was some kind of gas leak, some toxic agent in her blood that caused a mass psychotic event. I try to tell them, but the words die in my throat. How do you describe a thing that defied geometry? How do you explain a smell that felt older than the hospital, older than the city itself? They wouldn't believe me. I know what happened. Amara wasn't the patient. She was just the container, the vessel, and we were the fucking delivery team. We opened the door. Whatever was inside her is out now. And I was the only one in that room who saw it and wasn't taken. I don't know why. But every time I close my eyes, I see those blinking black eyes, and I wonder if it remembers me. I wonder if it's just waiting to finish the job.